Hey, it's Adam Lugsch-Tehle, existential and lifestyle coach. Today, let's dive deep into a topic that hits pretty close to home for me and for many of us, winning the war in our minds. I've been there, I've done that, struggling with self-blame and relentless guilt that seems to haunt almost every decision that I make. The good news is there's a powerful technique. It changed the game, certainly for me, and it's called cognitive restructuring. It's been around the block for a while. It's a research-based practice, and it helps transform our inner dialogue so that we can kind of break free from worn-out thought cycles and really step into our full potential. So have you ever found yourself trapped in that never-ending cycle of enervating anxiety? I certainly have. The panic would almost grip me out of nowhere, and it was often triggered by some perceived failure or some kind of self-judgment about the past. I felt literally like I was losing my mind, like I had no control over any part of my emotional state anymore. Well, the stories that we tell ourselves, they have power, right? When we get caught in cycles of rumination and self-blame, it colors everything that we can see. Our inner critic is on overdrive, attacking us at our weakest moments, and our self-trust starts to erode. Maybe you can relate. I still vividly remember a time when I was paralyzed by anxiety and self-doubt. I had just started a coaching practice. I'd put myself out there online. Well, people are rude. Every negative comment or lack of engagement, it felt like a crushing failure. I blamed myself relentlessly that I would never own up. I would never measure up to help the people that I wanted to help. And the guilt and the self-judgment, like I said, was relentless. Well, now I know that research shows that over 75% of us fall into that category of self-talk, that negative self-judgment. But at the time, I was isolated in this battle against my own mind. I was losing hope that anything could change. Have you faced that kind of darkness too? Do you constantly find yourself judging not just other people, but what about judging yourself? Let's unravel that just a little bit. So shallow empathy keeps us from forming the deep connections that we crave, starting with how judgment, it really isolates us. When we're trapped in self-judgment, we project that onto other people. Convinced of our own inadequacy, we must assume that no one could truly understand us, no one could truly care about us. That inner wound creates a barrier to vulnerability and to trust. Well, researchers have found that judgment lights up the brain's fight or flight reflex. It releases a bunch of cortisol and adrenaline more and more into the bloodstream. Now we have this chemical cascade that's priming us for conflict instead of for comfort, trapping judgmental people in chronic stress cycles. Well, get this, over 75% of people who judge themselves and others harshly, they battle depression. They battle anxiety. Judgment is toxic. Well, brain studies have also revealed that it damages memory centers over time and it sabotages learning. So who knew that judging could make us rigid and forgetful too? The costs just keep piling up. They're high. No wonder kindness and self-compassion strongly predict happiness and life satisfaction across so many cultures. But there's a path back to connection. Are you ready to challenge those roots of your lack of confidence and the roots of poor self-image? Because I've got something powerful for you. So let's dive into the daily struggles that hold us back when we lack confidence and we wrestle with self-image issues. These patterns often start in childhood or adolescence, frequently tied to exclusion, to appearance-based teasing, or even emotional neglect in early life from our caregivers. Listen, I see clients that still carry those stories decades later, dragging the past into the present confident crisis. I was wildly insecure as a teenager. I think maybe many of us were. I second-guessed almost every move. I was unsure if I would measure up. My own self-judgment, and I assumed that this was the case for most youth, that judgment left me feeling restless, left me feeling unsettled. It wasn't really until I started reframing my inner dialogue in college that I began to unlock confidence from within myself. I had to challenge my assumptions of inadequacy. My entire bearings, when I did that, changed. I started to kind of walk taller. I spoke up more. The transformation kind of gave me the courage to pursue my boldest dreams, including building an online platform to empower other people. If I could relight my inner fire, I knew that others could too. Now, I want to take a note here. Reframing is still a daily practice of mine. That bearing may have changed, but life certainly has a way of keeping us humble, so I have to keep coming back to it. So what if you could transform your inner dialogue, gain a more balanced understanding of life's challenges? Let me introduce you to a tool called cognitive restructuring, and it's key to acting in the presence of overwhelm and fear. It's a key tool to build courage. It was developed back in the 1960s by a psychiatrist, Aaron Beck. It's an evidence-based technique, and it really helps us identify first and then shift second our cognitive distortions. Restructuring empowers us to move from a reactive, uneven thought to a more responsive, reality-based structure. Studies confirm it not only relieves depression and anxiety, but it also builds self-confidence, it builds resilience, and it builds life satisfaction. The science is clear. And I love when a tool has been around the block for a while, so to speak, and it really stands the test of time. So it might be that cognitive restructuring is a missing tool that could empower you too to overcome those negative thought cycles and really heal some relationships that have been damaged by judgment and give you the opportunity to step into your potential. I believe it is that powerful. There was one study that found over 80% of depressed patients saw substantial symptom relief through restructuring. That gives me hope for lifting that fog of judgment and self-blame in our culture at large too. I mean, just think of the talent and the creativity that we could unleash. Okay, Adam, we get it. It works. It's validated. So teach us, O wise master. How do we go from theory to practice to mastery on this one? Well, I want to break it down. The cognitive restructuring process is step by step, at least the way I think of it. And we're going to use guilt as an example. So I want you to first pinpoint the automatic thought that's causing distress. So for example, I'm so selfish for taking time for myself. Then I want you to identify the distortions, the black and white thinking that have overcome your mind, all or nothing. So for example, and if I take a break now, who's going to take care of and then fill in the blank of any chore around the house? Because I'm the only one who's doing anything anyway. Or something at work, for example. Now I want you to challenge the thought with questions like, would I call my best friend selfish if they were relaxing? Or how are others contributing to the housework or to the project that I'm working on? What am I missing? And then finally, I want you to replace those thoughts with just a more balanced, sage-like discerning thought. And that might sound something like, taking breaks helps me be fully present. Or, I'm so grateful for others chipping in around here. It may not be perfect, but they're really trying to contribute and to do their best. And with practice, if you follow these 3-4 steps, it starts to unfold almost automatically in your mind. And then restructuring starts to empower you to short circuit those destructive thought loops before they take hold and root once and for all. So take a moment. Take a moment to reflect on your own automatic thoughts and cognitive distortions, that all or nothing thinking or that catastrophizing. And as you become aware of these patterns, I want you to remember not to judge yourself, no blame or shame, because awareness really is the first step, not condemnation, right? Let's get rid of the judge. Now, consider sharing those observations with someone that you trust. I find that social support, community, it calms the threat response when I'm triggered by my distorted thinking. Let me tell you about a client of mine, Janice. Janice came to me burnt out. I mean, fried to a crisp, riddled with mom guilt. And through some cognitive restructuring, she transformed her inner dialogue. So now she gives herself that grace rather than that criticism. And Janice, she even started her own coaching business, which I think is fantastic. And at first, she doubted the change was real, doubted and worried that people would judge her for promoting herself and kind of stepping out there. But as Janice stuck with that practice, with that process, those old mental tapes, they kind of lost their grip. And she now proudly serves moms who seek balance and self-care in their lives. So be encouraged by a story like Janice's courage. Like Janice discovered, the journey starts with you. I hope that her story and this short technique sparks your own transformation. Again, really the first step is identifying the pain points and those automatic thoughts that are holding you back. So be brave. There is power in releasing this judgment, this anxiety, and self-blame. Because at the end of the day, you deserve to live boldly. You deserve to live freely as your best self. And releasing the mental weight gives you the energy to uplift others too. So imagine the positive ripples that your newfound practice and peace could have in your relationships, in your workplace, in your community. We explored the self-judgment and anxiety traps that hold us back, daring to get personal about my own struggles, and the journey towards freedom we now know requires ruthless self-examination of our automatic thought patterns. So cognitive restructuring gives us that research-backed technique to transform our inner dialogue so we interrupt those cycles of distorted thinking and we disrupt the suffering. Janice, and I can tell you, I'm sure millions of others have found freedom through these practices. And my wish for you is that no one suffers silently in their own minds when these tools for living, they're available readily. Let's support each other in questioning those worn out thought cycles so we can reconnect with truth, we can connect with grace, we connect with possibility. There's no need to wage a war within ourselves because each new thought opens the doorway wider and wider. As always, here's to living unstoppably free together today.